I know it probably seems like I'm milking the Starfield salt on my channel, and it seems that way because I totally 100% am. It's been a long time since there was a topic generating this much salt for this much time, and honestly, when I think about it, I think this is the first time it's ever happened in terms of like the velocity and amount of salt for X amount of time, months, years. Reason being, PlayStation guys have basically been running wild and free when it comes to which HD console has more praised and hyped exclusive games. PC guys don't give a hoot because we never have and never will, and whatever games you're hyping up, we'll just make it better with mods in the future anyways. But between the Xbox and PlayStation, Sony has been doing well for themselves by pumping out Game of the Year bait games for like a decade now, and I think that's why Starfield scares the PS5 faithful so much. Because not only is it looking like a real Game of the Year contender, but it also has a very spooky level of actual gameplay, and it's not even trying to hold the player's hand at every possible turn like an overprotective friend. Basically, they hate Starfield for the same reasons a lot of them hated Elden Ring. It's a good-looking, gameplay-focused Game of the Year contender that goes directly against what Sony told them is what a good game is supposed to be. But the difference this time is now it's exclusive to their competing platform, and they can't handle that. The Starfield salt saga has been long and salty, and we've covered Twitter salt, we've covered YouTuber salt, we've even covered some journalist salt, which was extra depressing. But what happens when all of the salt worlds collide? Nothing. I just make another video about it. But with how much the PlayStation faithful have been screaming about Starfield and trying to kill all of its hype by any means necessary, you would imagine that everyone would have realized by now that it's all just for the sake of the console war. Like, there's really not a whole lot of legitimacy or really deep thought behind the things that the PlayStation faithful are throwing at Starfield. But then along comes a Kotaku writer who just can't help but completely misread the situation. Whoa, who could have predicted that Kotaku would misread the situation? And when they looked at all the negativity on social media surrounding Starfield, instead of noticing all of these criticisms coming from an obvious place of bad faith and console warring, they went ahead and wrote a whole article about how it's actually the Starfield community doing all this. Games journalism. Not even once. So this all started when some leaked Starfield gameplay came out the other day, and there was a clip that went viral of someone just walking forward across a desert planet for like 40 minutes before they hit an invisible wall and were told to turn back. Obviously, I'm not going to show the footage because I don't want Todd Howard to come put his fist up my butthole, but this kicked off a multi-day debate between Starfield fans and PlayStation fans over the actual severity of the invisible walls. Basically, what it boiled down to was on one side, you had people saying this wasn't really a big deal because walking 40 minutes in one direction until you hit a map boundary is still a pretty huge map on its own, and while yeah, it's a little lame you can't circle around to the place you just started like on a real planet, this is still a gigantic map. And also, this is just one planet out of context, so again, we don't really know how big of a deal this is going to be during gameplay. And funny enough, after this leaked footage started getting a lot of traction online, some of the other people who have gotten the game early came out and said just flat out that it's not representative of the game as a whole, but I digress. So that was one side of the aisle, but on the other side of the aisle, there were the usual suspects screaming about how this is official proof that Starfield is a total lie and a piece of garbage, and Todd Howard should be firing squatted at dawn in the town square and go buy a PlayStation 5 instead, hashtag not sponsored. Like, it really wasn't hard to see what was going on here. It's the same thing that happened when it was revealed that like 10% of the planets were going to be populated, because the people excited for Starfield were like, yeah, 10% makes sense. We wouldn't want every planet to be populated because that would take a lot of the exploration and mystery out of the experience. But then the PlayStation stands just read the headline and they were like, oh my god, this game is literally dead, just play No Man's Sky lol ratio. Like, these people don't actually play games, nor do they want games to be good. They just look at the marketing, and if it has the only on PlayStation stamp, they decide right there it's good. It's the same reason they were trying to hype up Baldur's Gate 3 non-stop and bragging about how awesome it was and how it's like, oh, it's the PlayStation 5's best game. Oh, fuck you, Xbox. But then the literal second the Xbox version was confirmed, they all just went dead silent about it. Like, Baldur's Gate 3 comes out on PS5 on September 6th. Shouldn't you guys be getting excited? I mean, we all knew you weren't actually going to play it because of the lack of hand-holding, but you could at least pretend you're still excited for it. And I mean, if you want to get petty about it, the same people yelling about invisible walls in Starfield are the same people hyping up Spider-Man 2, and I could very easily throw the criticism back at them, because it's not like Spider-Man 2 isn't also going to have invisible walls on the edges of the map, and you're not going to be able to walk into every single building, or swim in all the water, or talk to 99% of the NPCs, but when it comes to Starfield, oh, suddenly, Complete and total freedom of exploration is of utter importance. Like, seriously, you guys are getting so lazy. The point I'm getting at here is that it should be really, really obvious to the casual observer that the Starfield hype is huge and the leaks about the map barriers really didn't change that. And I'm not saying nobody excited for Starfield was taken aback by this invisible wall fiasco, but the vast majority of people really weren't fazed by it. Because I think most of us know that one out-of-context leaked clip of a game this big isn't really going to be a great representation of what it's going to be like when we actually get our hands on it. It's the people who weren't going to buy the game regardless that are causing a big stink about it. And yet Kotaku still feels the need to bust into the room and slam this article down on the counter as if they have any idea what's actually going on here and totally aren't just trying to hit an article quota for the week. So I'm not going to read this whole fucking thing because it's Kotaku and I just really can't be fucked anymore with them, but I'll take you through the highlights and then we can take a look at the totally awesome reception this article has had so far. So let's take a look at Starfield fans are melting down over invisible walls by Ethan. The first few paragraphs are basically just summarizing the situation and essentially spelling out how much of a non-issue this is, but then we get to this bit. A number of players have pointed out that 40 minutes to reach the edge, if that is indeed the case, is already bigger than the entire Fallout 4 map, which only takes 35 minutes to reach the end of when starting from the center. Who needs hundreds of planets that function as endless treadmills continually populating the space in front of you with new randomly generated foliage, rocks, and monsters? Starfield players, apparently. Again, because Starfield players are the ones mad about this. Yes, totally. You absolutely understand what's happening here. Or at least a few of them who hoped Bethesda's first open-world RPG in 8 years would be perfect, boundless, and completely unexpected. The cracks are starting to show, reads one of the latest threads posted on the Starfield Steam discussion page as if predicting the world historical fall of liberal democracy in the West. That's totally not an over-exaggeration. I completely follow this one-to-one comparison. The first bullet point is about how, based on initial leaks at least, players can't climb ladders without hitting a loading screen. The machines cooking up virtual fantasies in the Matrix would never. I can't remember the last time expectations felt this high for a new blockbuster. It doesn't help that Bethesda keeps breathlessly touting the game's massive size and scope, and the fact that you can apparently play for over 100 hours before even really getting started. Or that Xbox Series XS owners are desperate for a Game of the Year contender on the level of God of War Ragnarok or The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Anything to wash the taste of Redfall, really. I hope Starfield is good. I'm fairly confident it won't be a disaster. I'm also 100% positive it won't be as good as the perfect game some fans have spent the last 5 years turning Starfield into in their heads.
Well, that was a load of shit.
It really annoys me when journalists, and this is something that I said in the last video, that journalists who are supposed to be on top of everything with like with their finger on the pulse of the community, really understanding all the viewpoints, it really fucking bothers me when they just read what's trending on Twitter and completely disregard where that came from or why those ideas were trending in the first place. Again, like, no one is mad about this. I can't overstate that. No one was mad about this. The only people mad about this were people who weren't gonna play the game in the first place. And as you may expect, the article is not going well. It's generated yet another ratio for Kotaku. My goodness, well done. Honestly, it amazes me how often Kotaku gets ratioed and they just can't figure out how to stop embarrassing themselves. I mean, this fucking title was not a great start. Little rule of thumb, when a certain game has a giant campaign of blind hate against it, and it has had a campaign of blind hate against it for months now, maybe you shouldn't blame the game's community for negative attention. Just a thought. It's just my opinion. That might not go well. And I mean, you know things are bad when the top comment on your own website is someone not buying what you're selling. Like, when you go to the article on Kotaku, this is the top comment. Maybe this is because I never played No Man's Sky, but I never expected there to not be barriers on the different worlds. And of course, Twitter is where the really fun and not curated responses to this article are. At the time that I'm recording this video, this is what the ratio looks like. Nicely done. And the replies are wonderful. Most vocal meltdowns came from PlayStation fans who favor complaining about nothing over playing the game when it's out. The only people melting down are PlayStation fanboys who are desperate for Starfield to be anything less than amazing. And Kotaku. Correction, console warriors are melting down. Kotaku is clickbaity as ever. Definitely not Starfield fans, more like console warriors. Lol, how are you guys still around? Show me any Starfield fan whining about a boundary. It's console warriors only nitpicking looking for a win. This made me want to pre-order the game now, thanks. Oh boy, look, I'm really excited for this game. I've got it preloaded. I'll be playing on the 6th, and I was absolutely not discouraged by the existence of an invisible wall in a Bethesda RPG. Because unlike a lot of people on the internet, I was never expecting No Man's Sky from this fucking thing. I was expecting a galaxy-sized Bethesda RPG, and that's what I'm getting. If it sucks, I'll be happy to talk about what sucks about it. But until I get my hands on it, I'll be happy to keep making fun of the blind salt this game has been generating, because good golly gosh, it's incredible. Toodles.